So this is the second video of going through the different bhavas or houses in Vedic astrology, and this PDF, this book in PDF version that we're going through is by Ernst Wilhelm. It's called Graha Sutras. So this is a very good guide on all this. So we'll be using this again. And last time we covered houses 1 to 7. Today we'll be going from house 8 onwards. Okay. So the eighth bhava or the eighth house is for longevity, battle, cheats, impassibles, or strongholds, wealth of the dead, and the soul course. What begins and what after the wise see all from the cavity flaw bhava. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. We have longevity. How long is someone going to live for? Okay, because the eighth house rules crucial vital energy of the body. If that vital core energy is high, then the person will live long. So this is like chronic energy. It is the vibrancy of the body, right? Which high prana means higher vibrations in the body, in the cells, and everything. So the eighth house is the battle. The sixth house is the initiation of the battle. The eighth house is the actual battle, and the 12th house is the result of the battle. Eighth house are people and things that are going to cheat you, things that are hiding, that are hard to see, that just come all of a sudden, unexpected, right? So unexpected impassibles or impassibles in general, things that are hard to overcome, right? It's like you're walking and all of a sudden there's a mountain in your way which you have to cross, and it's going to take effort, and you don't know how to mountain climb. You're not sure. You might get to the other side, might not. You don't know how long it's going to take, right? You might get it, you might not get it. Maybe you'll get like someone will just give you a ride all of a sudden. That happens too with the eighth house. But yeah, generally speaking, it's just like the more difficult things, right? A good eighth house will give good surprises, a bad eighth house will give bad surprises. But it gives surprises nonetheless, which we're not prepared for sometimes. That we cannot ride the waves of the ocean, essentially, because the waves sometimes are very large. So if it's a good eighth house, you can ride the waves well. If it's a bad, then you cannot. So also the wealth of the dead and the soul course. So eighth house rules inheritances, wealth of the dead. Okay, the second house, which is the opposite, rules personal resourcefulness, while the eighth house is collective resourcefulness, inheritance, shared resources with a spouse, partner, with anyone, shared businesses, shared money, etc. And the soul course, what begins and what after the wise see all from the cavity flaw. So how it starts and what happens after, which the wise see from this flaw house of flaw. So so essentially this is the house of the wise, who are able to see how things start and how they end, right? The flaws and things that are just ready to break, and the flaws in general. Usually the people with good eighth house, they're very easily to see the flaws in things. They have good intuition. They're able to see, okay, how this is going to end based on how it started, and what is the destiny of things. So that intuition, it's good for this house is crucial for having indications of being a good astrologer, occultist, any such practices, um, predictions, any such things. This is a good house for that. Any person with a good eighth house will be able to see things before they break. Will be able to see the flaw in things, see how things are going, and hopefully be able to uh, change what bring the changes that need to be made, make the changes that need to be made in order to prevent that thing from happening. Whereas a person with a bad eighth house will not be able to see what's coming and therefore not be able to act on it in time. So to elaborate, we will now look at this description right here. So the eighth house indicates the process of developing emotional freedom and security. This emotional security is only possible once we become free of all attachments that limit the perception of our spiritual nature. So that's interesting. It indicates the process of developing emotional freedom and security. Okay. So one needs to develop emotional freedom where they're not emotionally tied up and they're not attached to doing things and they're okay with anything, right? They're not detached to things, they're not attached to things, they're okay with doing the anything, the good, bad, and ugly, because all three have been created by the divine for us to experience, right? So it's the process of developing emotional freedom and security, the security to be able to go through the good, bad, and ugly while being emotionally secure. You're not going to break because the the harder you have, uh the more attached you are to something, you're going to lose it, right? Because life is going to teach you not to be attached. So you have the security that you'll be okay and nothing bad will happen. Once you go through the good, bad, and ugly of life, you'll be okay and nothing bad will happen. And you're not going to lose anything because you're not attached to anything. You're not detached to anything. Everything is just okay. You don't have any craving and aversions. This emotional security is only possible once we become free of all attachments that limit the perception of our spiritual nature. So this emotional security that we just talked about is only possible once we become free of all attachments that limit the perception of our spiritual nature, like I said. So we have attachments to the worldly things, right? That limit us, that prevent us from perceiving accurately and fully the our spiritual nature, our oneness with the creation. We think we're separate entities. Okay. So only if we become free from these attachments will we get this emotional security. Uh, and developing that emotional security will happen in the eighth house. Okay. Sins are the greatest obstacle to realizing our spiritual nature. The eighth house therefore rules sins and their purifications. So that's interesting. If we've done things that are have a very high karmic repercussion associated to them, like wished someone unwell or death or something like that, these are great obstacles to realizing our spiritual natures because these are considered, you can say these are sins, right? The eighth house rules sins and their purification. So all the worst kind of karmas that you have, the worst kind of actions you've committed that have very heavy karmic repercussions, that are difficult and lasting and that are going to be painful, uh, perhaps. I mean, you shouldn't perceive them as painful, but that's what they will feel like They're painful as long as you don't have the emotional security to go through them. And a lot of people won't. So that's what it would feel like. It would feel painful. Because to the world it is, right? To the world it is painful, but spiritually it's just because it's just the working out of past life karma. And why it's painful to the world, like from the perspective of the world, because these are things of, like I said, uh can be of a bad and ugly nature, and that just looks ugly to like watch someone go through that. Okay, so the eighth house therefore rules sins and their purification. The sins or the difficult karmas that you have to go through need to be, that those sins need to be purified, right? And that's going to happen in the eighth house. You're going to get the mm, karmic repercussions, suffering um, of the sins, right? Um, that's what that means. The need to purify ourselves of our sins and to reap the results of our karma creates events in our life that are unplanned and unexpected. The need to purify ourselves of our sins and to reap the results of our karma creates events in our life that are unplanned and unexpected. Okay. The eighth house therefore rules unexpected happenings and breaks in life. So we have these sins that we need to purify, right? And reap the results of the karma, which is the sins that we created. And so how that plays out is that life gives us unplanned and unexpected events, right? To reap the results of our karma or our sins. Okay. The eighth house therefore rules unexpected happenings. So unexpected happenings and breaks in life are ruled by the eighth house. They happen in the eighth house. One way in which sins become purified is through our bodies. The eighth house therefore rules chronic disease, surgery, and severe accidents. Okay. Because the sins need to be purified. And one way is through the bodies and through things like chronic disease, things that cannot be healed. That must be a very strong, sinful kind of karma that needs to be purified, right? From a past life. Chronic disease, right? Surgery, that's a painful thing to go through. And so is severe accidents, which all these things result in the body suffering permanent damage, such as broken bones, etc. The health and the physical difficulties initiated by the eighth house are much deeper than those of the sixth house. Okay. Health and physical difficulties indicated by the eighth, much deeper than those of the sixth. The bodily afflictions may also correspond to huge inner transformations, which are so deep that the body itself undergoes some permanent or long-term change. This is interesting, that an affliction to the body may correspond to a huge inner transformation. So this is, you can say, the positive side of the eighth house. There might be affliction to the body, but that might be there because a huge inner transformation is happening. A transformation so deep and so expedited, so fast, that the body itself goes through a permanent or long-term change. So there might be just this leap of transformation. And that's what the eighth house is infamous for, the suddenness of events, good or bad, right? And the the positive, the bright side, which is like the higher version of the eighth house. It's like if you're able to live in the higher version of the eighth house, if you're able to do that eighth house well, if you're able to ride those waves well, then this can mean inner transformations that happen, that are very big, significant transformations, like just huge quantum leaps that just happen just like that. And the body itself might change and look very different, uh, which is corresponding with that transformation. Now, thing is, like, this doesn't mean like you're necessarily gonna body's gonna get very beautiful or anything, right? This is more like it could, but I believe it would be more like um like something breaks in the body doesn't look the same. Now it's like that's a huge letting go of the ego if all of a sudden you don't look the same, right? um Things like that. Or you could look, all of a sudden you look very different, but now it's aesthetically more pleasing. So now there's a transformation uh, related to that. Like that's a lesson that you needed, perhaps, right? So it all depends, but the main point to remember is that there's usually a huge inner transformations can happen. And generally speaking, this is not of a good nature because eighth house is the sins, right? So the whole beauty thing, I don't think, unless it's like, there's a exalted Jupiter there, and like like the Lord, the eighth is like Venus and Pisces in the first, which I've seen, like something like that. It's sort of, it's more like the difficult kind of things. If the eighth house is strong and the Lord is strong, it can give very good health and beauty indications for sure, because it protects that vital energy. The other great obstacles to realizing our spiritual nature are our desires and attachments. Okay. The eighth house therefore indicates the purification, transmutation of our desires and attachments. Okay. So no, the eighth house will probably, the kind of inner transformations that will correspond with bodily afflictions. Yeah, actually, never mind. So if you read here, it says afflictions, right? So yeah, not good change, but bad change. However, a change so bad that it'll quickly cause inner transformation. Okay. Sorry about that. So now moving on, yeah, the great obstacles to realize our spiritual nature are our desires and attachments. So we have desires and we have attachments, which are great obstacles to realizing our spiritual nature. Okay, because the spiritual nature is without desire and attachment. It is the yoga or the union or the oneness with the entire existence and everything that is a part of it. So the eighth house indicates the purification and transmutation of those desires and attachments. Some attachments are of an older origin and may come to us as legacies. So the eighth house rules legacies. Some of these legacies come to us due to a need to purify ourselves of some old and difficult karma. So, yeah, these attachments could be lifetimes old, right? And they could be ancient. Like, you never know, like how old they could be, like thousands and thousands of years. So it rules legacies. And this could be, it's a broad term. It could be almost anything. And these legacies come to us due to a need to purify ourselves of some old and difficult karma. So we have some old and difficult karma that is really stuck. Okay. It's old, it's ancient, it's difficult, it's just stuck. It's hard to get out of. And the attachment to that karma is so strong that it's become compulsive. Okay. A strong attachment equals to compulsions, right? That's what that means. So, yeah. So, like, it just says in the next paragraph, it rules compulsive actions. You need to purify old and difficult karma. Okay. We desire to purify ourselves of sins, even though it is painful and difficult to do so. That's why we came here, right? We came to purify ourselves of all our karma, or whatever karma we were allotted, uh, if not all of it. We came to purify ourselves of sins, even though it is painful and difficult to do so. So the eighth house rules compulsive actions that draw us to reap the results of our karma and do things we would otherwise not normally do. Okay. So that's interesting. We came to purify ourselves of sins, even though it is painful and difficult to do it. So how we're gonna purify these sins are through reaping the results of our karma, right? And because it's not a regular simple karma, it's a sin that we have to purify and reap the results of the sinful karma. The how we're gonna reap those is through compulsive actions that we're gonna do. Things, compulsive actions or things that we would otherwise not normally do, right? Compulsions means things we cannot stop doing. So we don't want to do it. We normally wouldn't do, but we cannot stop doing it because we're purifying a sin from a past life or past lives. Probably something that's stuck strongly in one life or more. So since once purified may create a boon, the eighth house therefore rules windfalls. Okay. Now I'm actually ESL, so just so someone did not know I'm ESL, I'm gonna just look this up. A piece of fruit blown down from a tree. Okay. I think windfall means sudden gains from this picture, it looks like. Yeah, okay. Pretty sure what that means. So sins one sins once purified may create a boon. The eighth house therefore rules windfalls. I mean, I know what that means. I'm just like confirming. Okay, a large amount of money that is work. A large amount of money that is won or received unexpectedly. Okay, awesome. Right? So we purify these sins, and this creates a boon, which is in the eighth house, and we can get windfalls, which is it's awesome, isn't it? Uh, to me, it is. once the, once the main purpose of life is to reap the results of our karma and transform ourselves and transmute our desires, the eighth house grants longevity in order to allow us time to do these things. Yeah, so one of the main purposes of life is to reap the results of our karma, right? And transform ourselves and transmute our desires. Okay. So the eighth house will give longevity in order to allow us time to do these things. This will take time, right? This will take energy. This will take help from God. And God through the eighth house will help one out. If the eighth house is good, if they've merited the longevity to be able to reap the results of their karma and transform themselves and transmute their desires, right? So longevity to withstand a lot of pain, because in the eighth house, you in a good eighth house, they'll still get a lot of pain, and sudden unexpected things happen, purification of sins through painful means happening, but they will have the longevity uh, to be able to deal with it again and again and again and again. In a good chart, in a good eighth, in a bad eighth, they wouldn't so easily. Okay. Um, the transformational processes of the eighth house may cause one to inquire deeply into the nature of things. Huh, interesting. So eighth house is the house of transformation, right? That's the one of the easy names of it. It's the house of transformation. The transformational process of the eighth house may cause one to inquire deeply into the nature of things. So in the eighth house, people will be going through lots of different things. If they have planets in the eighth house or the eighth lord very strong, then they can easily move into thinking about these things. There will be so many sudden things happening of a sudden and difficult and impassable nature, like we discussed, that they will start thinking about life and start inquiring deeply into the nature of things and not just living on the surface, but sort of diving and digging deep now. So how they will dive and dig deep is through things that are deep, right? Like esoteric studies and the occult, including astrology. So the eighth house therefore rules occult and esoteric sciences. So let's see, what are the different esoteric sciences? Okay. Alchemy, tantra, mantra, yantra, all this stuff is esoteric sciences. Astrology, tarot, probably Kabbalah, tarot. Yeah, I haven't really gotten into that, but like that's all esoteric sciences. Okay. Um, we also desire to find security through the agency of another. The eighth house therefore rules the conjugal bond between husband and wife, the value of relationship and other people's resources. Okay, let's go back to this for a second. What did we see here? Wealth of the dead and the soul close. Okay. Wealth of the dead. Okay. Hmm. So, see, there's like why eighth house rules the wealth of the dead is it also rules the wealth of partnerships. Okay, like combined shared resources, like shared businesses, shared assets, etc. Uh, and wealth of the dead is inheritances, right? So inheritances like you have the it's like a shared resource essentially that's like passed on. So in a way, it's a shared resources. So the eighth house is also about sharing things. And why it's about sharing things is because it's the seventh to the second. The second is not about sharing, it's about self-resourcefulness. And eighth house is about collective resourcefulness. So relying on others. Okay, that's what the eighth house means. Another meaning, we desire to find security through the agency of another. Okay, we cannot always be self-reliant. Sometimes we have to find security through the agency of another, because there's some things we just don't know how to do that only other people can provide for us. So yeah, if there's lots of planets in the eighth house, then that means that person is dependent on others for lots of things. Okay, they need to rely on the security of and the agency of another, which is difficult because now they can't do things on their own terms. They have to sort of make do with what they get from the other, right? And this is not really looked up to in society either. What's looked up to in society, what people clap for is like self-reliance for everything. But the planets in eighth house, they will give the kind of karma where you have to rely on other people. And that's one of the uh painful things. Purification of bad karmas. You can't do things on your own term in the free world with lots of resources and lots of money and lots of everything. You have to rely on someone. Okay, that's you going through the painful karma. Anyway, purification of your sins. So the eighth house therefore rules the conjugal bond between husband and wife, the value of relationship and other people's resources. Okay, so now you rely on the other person for something. So everyone has a 8,000 some sign, and for that they rely uh on the other person. Okay, so right? So it rules the conjugal bond between husband and wife, conjugal bond in relationships also, the value of a relationship, and other people's resources, like I said. So it's like if it's a good eighth house, it's like the value of the relationship is high. The conjugal bond is great, right? So the reliance on the other person does work out. If it's not, then it doesn't work out so well if the eighth house is not good, right? Anyway, it's a difficult thing to rely on someone. It's uh you rely on uh a relationship for a conjugal bond because you cannot feel that way by yourself, right? That's why you rely on someone for like an ultimate expression of love, where you have to rely on someone for something and they give it to you, and you couldn't have done it yourself and now you feel so great. And then this is a transformative thing, and these are all ruled by the uh eighth house. Great relationships, strong conjugal bonds, uh so great, the value you're getting from the relationship so high if eighth house is good, that it's transformative, right? It makes you see God, that, oh, it's just not me, it's the universe taking care of me, um through the other person, through other people's resources, and bringing the other person into my life and making me feel one with the other person or helping me out. So these can be highly transformative things that can shatter the ego, break a lot of karma, and even though difficult, but like once you're able to get on the other side of that mountain or on top of the mountain, this can be very transformative things, all these. So that's the eighth house. Now we're going to go to the ninth house. Okay, yeah, so we'll continue in the next video. Yeah, because it's kind of late, so I'm gonna have to make the next one another time.